The Uninvited Guest Chapter 1, The Quiet Suburb. When the Parker family moved into their new home in the quiet suburb of Millwood, they thought they had found their dream house. It was a charming two-story house with a large backyard, nestled at the end of a cul-de-sac. The neighborhood was peaceful, with children playing in the streets and friendly neighbors who waved as they passed by. For 17-year-old Sarah Parker, the move had been bittersweet. She had to leave behind her friends and the only town she had ever known. But Millwood wasn't all bad. The high school seemed decent, and she quickly made new friends. The house itself was nice, even if it was a bit old. The creaky floorboards and the occasional strange noise were easy to ignore. Her parents were both lawyers, often working late into the night. Sarah was used to being home alone, especially during the evenings. She didn't mind. It gave her time to catch up on her favorite shows, talk to her friends, and do her homework in peace. But as the days turned into weeks, and the initial excitement of the new home faded, Sarah began to notice odd things, small things. The back door would sometimes be unlocked when she was sure she had locked it. Items in her room would be moved slightly out of place. She told herself she was being paranoid, that she was just imagining things. One Friday evening, her parents were both attending a work event and wouldn't be home until late. Sarah had planned a night of relaxation, pizza, a scary movie, and maybe a bubble bath before bed. After dinner, she settled on the couch in the living room, the soft glow of the TV casting shadows across the room. The wind howled outside, rustling the trees, but inside the house was warm and comforting. As she watched her movie, she heard a faint noise from upstairs. It was a soft thud, like something heavy being dropped. She paused the movie, listening intently, but the noise didn't come again. Shrugging it off as the house settling, she resumed watching, pulling a blanket tighter around herself. About 20 minutes later, she heard it again this time. It was a creak, like someone was slowly walking down the hallway upstairs. Her heart skipped a beat. She muted the TV, straining to hear. The creaking stopped, and the house was once again silent. Telling herself it was just her imagination, she resumed her movie, but the sense of unease lingered. Chapter 2, The Strange Occurrences. The weekend passed without incident, but by Monday evening, the strange occurrences started again. Sarah was home alone, sitting at the kitchen table doing her homework, when she heard the sound of footsteps upstairs. Her heart raced as she realized she wasn't imagining it this time. The footsteps were distinct, slow, and deliberate. She grabbed her phone, her hands trembling as she dialed her mom's number. It rang and rang, but there was no answer. She tried her dad, but he didn't pick up either. Desperation creeping in, she called her friend Emily. There's someone in my house," Sarah whispered, her voice shaking. "What? Are you sure?" Emily asked, her tone laced with concern. "I hear footsteps upstairs. I'm the only one home," Sarah replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sarah, you need to get out of there. Go to a neighbor's house and call the police," Emily urged. But before Sarah could move, the footsteps stopped. There was a moment of silence, and then she heard it, a low, eerie creak, like someone slowly opening a door upstairs. Fear paralyzed her as she waited, listening for the next sound. "Sarah, are you still there?" Emily's voice was frantic. I'm going to check it out," Sarah stammered, her fear momentarily giving way to a surge of adrenaline. "Don't. Just get out of there," Emily pleaded. But Sarah was already moving. She grabbed a kitchen knife for protection and slowly made her way upstairs, each step feeling like an eternity. When she reached the top of the stairs, she saw that the door to her parents' bedroom was ajar. The room was dark, and she couldn't see anything inside. Holding her breath, she pushed the door open with the tip of the knife and flicked on the light. The room was empty. The bed was neatly made, the curtains drawn, and nothing seemed out of place. But as she turned to leave, she noticed something, a small, faint handprint on the window, as if someone had pressed their hand against the glass. It was small, too small to belong to an adult, and there was something else, what looked like smudges of dirt on the windowsill, as if someone had climbed in or out. Sarah's blood ran cold. She backed out of the room, her heart pounding, and hurried downstairs, locking herself in the kitchen. She called Emily back, her voice shaking as she recounted what she had found. Emily insisted she call the police, but Sarah was too scared. She didn't want to cause a scene if it turned out to be nothing. She decided to wait until her parents got home. The rest of the night passed in a blur. Her parents finally arrived home around midnight, and Sarah ran to them, telling them everything that had happened. Her dad checked the house, but found nothing out of the ordinary. The handprint on the window was gone, wiped clean. Her parents assured her it was just her imagination, a trick of the light. But Sarah knew what she had seen, and the feeling of being watched didn't go away. Chapter 3, The Unseen Presence. Over the next few weeks, the strange occurrences became more frequent and more disturbing. Sarah would wake up in the middle of the night to the sound of footsteps outside her door, only to find the hallway empty when she checked. Doors would creak open on their own, and the feeling of being watched grew stronger. One night, Sarah was lying in bed, trying to sleep, when she heard something that made her blood run cold, a soft whisper, coming from the darkness of her room. It was so faint that she almost didn't hear it, but there was no mistaking it. Sarah, her name, spoken in a raspy, childlike voice, sent a jolt of fear through her. She sat up in bed, her eyes scanning the room, but there was nothing there, just the shadows cast by the moonlight streaming through the window. "Who's there?" she whispered, her voice trembling, but there was no answer. The whispering stopped, and the room fell silent. She turned on her bedside lamp, flooding the room with light, but she was alone. The feeling of dread grew stronger, and she could no longer deny that something was terribly wrong. The next day, she told her parents everything: the whispers, the footsteps, the feeling of being watched. Her mom suggested they bring in a priest to bless the house, while her dad remained skeptical, but agreed to humor her. A few days later, a priest visited the house and performed a blessing. For a while, things seemed to return to normal. The strange noises stopped, and Sarah began to sleep better. But deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that whatever had been in the house wasn't gone, it was just lying in wait. Chapter 4: The Truth Uncovered. One Saturday, while cleaning out the attic with her mom, Sarah came across an old, dusty box tucked away in a corner. Curious, she opened it and found a stack of yellowed papers and faded photographs. The papers were old newspaper clippings, dating back several decades. As she read through them, her heart began to race. The clippings told the story of a family that had lived in the house many years ago, a family with a young daughter named Lily. The articles detailed a tragic event. Lily had gone missing one night, and despite an extensive search, she was never found. The case remained unsolved, and the family eventually moved away, leaving the house vacant for years. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine as she looked at the photographs. One picture, in particular, caught her eye: a photo of Lily, a small girl with long dark hair and a shy smile. There was something unsettling about the photo, something in the girl's eyes that made Sarah uneasy. She showed the clippings to her mom, who was equally shocked. They both agreed that this might explain the strange occurrences, but it didn't make them any less terrifying. Was Lily still in the house, her spirit unable to move on? And if so, what did she want? That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Lily, about the whispers, and the handprint on the window. She needed answers, and she knew there was only one way to get them. Chapter 5: The Confrontation. Sarah waited until everyone was asleep before sneaking out of bed and heading downstairs. She grabbed a flashlight and made her way to the attic. The house was eerily quiet, the only sound the creaking of the floorboards under her feet. As she reached the attic, she hesitated for a moment, fear gnawing at her. But she knew she couldn't live in fear any longer. She needed to know the truth. She pulled down the ladder and climbed up into the darkness. The attic was cold and musty, filled with old boxes and forgotten memories. She turned on the flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness, and slowly made her way to the corner where she had found the box earlier. As she approached, she noticed something she hadn't seen before: a small, wooden door, half hidden behind a pile of boxes. It was old and weathered, and looked like it hadn't been opened in years. Her heart raced as she reached out and grasped the handle, pulling it open. Inside was a small, dark space, barely big enough for a child to hide in. And there, lying on the floor, was something that made Sarah's blood run cold: a small, worn teddy bear, covered in dust. Next to it was a faded ribbon, the same one Lily had been wearing in the photograph. Tears filled Sarah's eyes as she realized what this meant. Lily had hidden in this space, scared and alone. But something had happened, something terrible. She reached down and picked up the teddy bear, clutching it to her chest. "Lily," she whispered into the darkness. For a moment, there was only silence. But then, she heard it, a soft, childlike voice, barely audible, but unmistakable. "Help me." Sarah's heart broke as she realized that Lily was still here, trapped in the house, unable to move on. But she didn't know how to help her, didn't know what to do. She was just a girl, alone in a dark attic, holding the last remnants of a life long gone. But then, she felt something warm, like a gentle hand on her shoulder. And she knew, deep down, that Lily didn't want to hurt her. She just wanted to be found, to be remembered. Chapter 6: The Final Goodbye. The next day, Sarah told her parents everything. They contacted the local authorities, who came to the house and investigated the attic. What they found confirmed Sarah's worst fears: the remains of a small child, hidden away in the crawl space, long forgotten. It was Lily. The news shocked the community, and the story made headlines. The mystery of Lily's disappearance was finally solved, and her family, who had long since moved away, was contacted. They were devastated, but grateful that their daughter's spirit could finally be at peace. A small, private funeral was held for Lily, and her remains were buried in the local cemetery. Sarah attended, placing the teddy bear she had found on Lily's grave. As she stood there, she felt a sense of peace wash over her, as if Lily was finally free. The strange occurrences in the house stopped after that. The whispers, the footsteps, the feeling of being watched, they were all gone. The house was quiet, peaceful, just as it had been when they first moved in. But Sarah would never forget what had happened. She knew that the house had been haunted, not by a malevolent spirit, but by a little girl who had been lost and forgotten. And she knew that she had done the right thing, even if it had been terrifying. As she stood in the backyard, looking up at the house, she felt a sense of closure. The house was no longer just a house, it was a home, a place where memories were made and where spirits, both living and dead, could find peace. And as the sun set over Millwood, casting long shadows over the quiet streets, Sarah knew that she would always remember Lily, the girl who had been lost, but was finally found.